The movie begins with a man named Joachim. He was wandering away in the desert for days. He fell in the sand, and he cried to God to bless him with a child. He was on the edge of giving up when suddenly he sees an angel who appeared from out of nowhere. The angel phased through the air. Joachim was marveled by this sight. He runs to meet the angel, begging the angel to grant him a child. The angel comforts him and assures him of a child, but he must dedicate the child to serve in the Lord's temple. He must dedicate his daughter to the temple. Joachim was ready to accept his fate. He went back home and happily shared the news to his wife and, happy that their prayers have been answered. At that time, the Romans appointed Herod to rule as king over Judea. He ruled with a fiery fist, and was a ruthless king who feared no one. Herod proposed to rebuild and expand the temple of God, as a sign of his dedication and service to God. He made the people work tirelessly as slaves in an attempt to fulfill his mission. This sparked a rebellion in the name of Aristobulus amongst the Judeans, as some were claiming Herod was using them to please the Romans and make a name for himself. Aristobulus, the high priest, was in the temple, when his sister Miriam, also the wife of the king, visits him secretly. She tells him to go into hiding, as things were now different. She had seen Herod's soldiers assaulting and arresting those who sparked rebellion against the king in his name. Later, the king is seen sitting with his wife Miriam across the dining table. He informs her at the moment that her brother Aristobulus has been murdered. This made her flare up, calling him all sorts of names, and he killed her in cold blood. Meanwhile, Joachim's wife was in labor of childbirth, and the midwives tried their best to ease her pain. Soon the cries of a newborn baby filled the air. And filled with joy after several years of wanting a child, they named the child Mary. Years later, Mary is seen as a young girl. She had fun playing in the fields with the butterflies, and was living happily with her family. She was out with her father one morning, and then the angel appeared again to her mother. The couple realized it was time to fulfill the promise they made to the angel. Her father then takes Mary to the top of a mountain. He narrates the story of her birth, and the promise he made to the angel before she was born, which must now be fulfilled. On the other hand, King Herod received news about a prophecy, a child who is going to put an end to his reign and become the king of the world, making feel less at ease. Mary's parents brought her to the temple in Jerusalem, to fulfill the promise they made to the angel. They met the Lady Anna. Mary realized her life was about to change without her parents, hugged them and said her goodbyes. She was welcomed by Lady Anna, and led straight into the temple. She was introduced to the priest as the vessel of the prophecy. The priest was delighted to finally meet her. She grew up, to become a very beautiful and hardworking lady. She spent most of her time planting flowers, and ends up arriving late to prayers with the other maidens. She and the other maidens were heading together to the cafeteria, when she spotted a beggar outside the temple walls. She later gathered some food from the table, putting them in a basket, and went outside the temple. She gives the food to the poor man, and also began spreading the food to the less privileged around. She was walking alone through the hallway, when the devil appeared to her. The devil tried to seduce Mary, tempting her with lustful thought, and offering her wishes beyond her imagination. She was almost giving in, and just then the angel appeared, and he was able to subdue the devil. At that time, King Herod was visiting the temple. Mary and some of the other maidens happened to be present. He began setting an artifact, desecrating the temple in the name of August Caesar. At that moment, the high priest came out beckoning on the king to mount the artifact elsewhere, and this aggravated the king. His crown was removed from his head, and a crown made of sharp thorns was forced into his head, which pierced into his eyes. The king kept proclaiming himself to the people. His gaze fell on Mary within the crowd. He stares at her, and then he sees a disturbing vision, which made him terrified and uncomfortable. Marcellus seized Mary while she was walking in the hallway. He threatened to kill her, demanding she tell him what she did to the king earlier. Luckily, Lady Anna was present and came to her rescue. She ordered Marcellus to leave Mary alone. But he threatening to find out what power she possessed and put it to an end. She immediately ran to embrace the old lady, who assures her that she would be fine. Meanwhile, there was a young man named Joseph heading to the river too. Mary happened to be on the other side washing. Joseph was getting set to find his prey when the angel appeared to him, telling him the hunt was better at the other side of the river, and he vanished. Mary was busy dancing with the wind, and there Joseph sighted her. He instantly became carried away by her beauty from the first glance. Just then her scarf flew off and fell into the river. Joseph jumps into the river in an attempt to rescue the scarf. Mary, seeing him, ignores him and picks the scarf using a stick. Joseph begs her to at least say her name before she leaves. Mary tells him she is the daughter of Joachim and he was being crazy. Joseph felt satisfied and drowned in love. Joseph hurriedly made his way to meet Mary's parents, telling Mary's father that he has come for Mary's hand in marriage as she was the bone of his bones. Her father thinks Joseph must have been drinking, tells him to look for his bones somewhere else, then he shuts the door on him. Joseph was unrelenting and continued to insist. He explains the angel appeared to him and directed him to where he first saw her. They then came to a conclusion, and then she goes to visit Mary. She breaks the news of Mary's engagement to happen at that moment. Mary was still surprised, and it was written all over her face even during the prayers and blessings of the priest. She hugged her parents and said her goodbyes. A man was also seen following Mary from a distance. Mary decided to take a nap, when suddenly the angel appeared behind her. He tells her to be calm, as she was about to conceive the child who is to be the king of the world. There was a light shining for a while and it went down. The angel was also gone. She wakes up and she felt the signs of conception in her womb. She tells Lady Anna about the message of the angel, and also the baby now in her womb. Lady Anna suggests they kept it a secret, but a maiden heard the conversation and bailed out on Mary. She was summoned before the council, and who decided Mary could no continue to be seen in the temple. Mother Anna assures Mary she would be back there when the time is right. Sadly, Mary went home to her parents. She sees her mother and they embraced each other. Mary reveals to her mother that she was banished from the temple because she was pregnant. Her mother decided to keep the secret from her father, and she sends Mary to her cousin Elizabeth in another village. She was happy to see Mary, and she realizes Mary was also with a blessed child, as the baby in her womb kept turning at the sound of her voice. King Herod was in the midst of this, lost in thought of the prophecy and planning way to kill the child, or prevent him from being born. Elizabeth had given birth to a son, and it was now time for Mary to travel back to her village to meet her parents. Meanwhile, Joseph was in the fields, when a man made fun of Joseph because the girl he was engaged to was already pregnant. This made him angry and led to a fight between the two. On the other hand, Mary faced her father, who was angry at her, and his wife for hiding it from him. He accused Mary of breaking her virtue with another man. Mary pleaded and she confessed it was the angel who visited her. He then became calm and hugs his wife and Mary. And just then, they heard a knock on the door. Joachim opens the door to see Joseph, furiously asking to see Mary. Mary's father replied that he doesn't know where she is, and he left angrily. Mary discovered it was Joseph knocking and she hurriedly went after him. She chased after him into the streets, but Joseph was already long gone. A man sees her and calls her a whore, and this made the men around to chase after her. They caught her and she was surrounded by people wanting to kill her. Joseph was dragged by the angry mob, and they handed him a stone to cast on Mary. He used the stone to weight of the crowd and he helped Mary to escape. Mary was thankful to Joseph for defending her, and he tells her he believes her and still wants her to be his wife. Mary and Joseph happily got married, and everyone present was seen to be having a good time dancing. Joseph walks up to his newly wedded wife and they danced along. Later that night, Joseph came into the tent where Mary lying on the bed. The new couple had a chat. He tells her how he doesn't understand any of what was happening, and he promised to love her and the child. At that moment, they were distracted by the noise of an ambush from the king's soldier. They fought back as much as they could, but along the way, Mary's father was caught in the midst of the sword fight and was stabbed in the belly. Mary came out at that moment, screaming as sees her father slowly taking his last breath and passed away. He was buried the following day, and the family grieved him. At this point Joseph tells and that he would be taking Mary to his hometown, to get far away from the soldiers. Meanwhile, travelers arrived at the king's palace seeking the child who is to fulfill the prophecy of becoming the king of the universe. The king was thrown in confusion and infuriated on hearing this. He tells the travelers to go find the baby and bring it to him. Joseph carried Mary, riding on a carriage heading to the city. When they arrived, the whole place was crowded as people heard rumors and were expecting the new king to be born in the town that night. Joseph leaves Mary to hold on while he goes in search of a place for them to stay. He knocked on several doors, begging for a place to spend the night, but he was turned down, with many of them saying the house was full. At that point, Mary was experiencing deep pain when the devil appeared to her. He deceived Mary to come with him, and he would ease all her pains, and at that moment, she passed out in his arms. Joseph showed up just in time to see the devil taking Mary away. He grabs a sword from one of the soldiers, and runs to stab the devil behind. Mary finally recovered, and she sees that Joseph had found a shelter for them. There was also a bright star which was hovering in the sky directly above them. Mary took to labor of childbirth, and after a few minutes, her baby was born. The star in the sky became brighter and everyone within or outside the city could see it. People came from far and wide to visit the birthplace. Meanwhile, King Herod received news that the child has already been born. His hate to eliminate the child grew deeper. He then ordered Marcellus to kill every male infant in the city. And if he finds the baby he should bring the child to him alive. Marcellus didn't hesitate to rain chaos in the city, as the soldiers raided and killed every child they encountered. Mary and Joseph had to flee with their baby, and they left the entire city. They came to a house on the way and decided to take a rest. They were welcomed by the owners, not knowing they were being followed by Marcellus. The soldiers reached the house and set the whole place on fire. They forced the man to surrender Mary and her child to them. And just then, Joseph ambushed Marcellus and a fight broke out. Mary finds a way through the rooftop. She puts the baby in a basket and gently lowered him down to Joseph, then she jumps after. Marcellus was seen coming towards Mary with a sword in his hands, and then Joseph pushed him away, covering him in a net and setting him on fire. Joseph then got on the horse and escaped the blazing fire with his family. Meanwhile, King Herod was terribly frustrated and filled with rage. The soldiers had gathered all the babies in the city, but they couldn't find the child of the prophecy. This made him furious. He was thrown into panic and he began to hallucinate. He sees the man in the blue robe, who tells him his days are numbered. And just then his followers began to leave one after the other, indicating the end of his reign as king. On the other hand, Mary together with her child and Joseph, joyfully made their way back to the city. They returned to the temple where they were being welcomed by the Lady Anna. She was happy to see them and leads them inside, to meet the high priests, and they dedicated the child of the prophecy to the Lord. The child was named Jesus and they lived under the care of the temple. And that's where the movie ended. Thanks for watching guys, please subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. See you guys in our next episode.